So let's get this started. Welcome. For those of you who have not had a chance to meet yet, I'm Mark Fenner. I'm a scaling up coach and strategist, and I founded a leadership development company in 2011 called Rise Performance Group. And welcome to Metrics, KPIs, and Critical Numbers, making sense of them all. I put this webinar together, long before this coronavirus epidemic jumped upon us, and I debated rescheduling it because I thought I don't want to be tone deaf to what's going on. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what, this is really maybe even more important now than it was were we not going through this coronavirus epidemic. And you'll notice I took my tagline that I originally had on this, that we're drowning in information while starving for wisdom. And I replaced it with this mantra that I've preached for years, but it's just more relevant today than ever. And that's, we must focus on what we can control. We must have trust, or we must have faith in the things that are within our influence. And then we must do everything in our power to avoid being distracted by those things that are out of our control. And we've got a big event taking place in everybody's lives that's out of our control, that's just distracting the heck out of a lot of us. I'm battling with the same things you are. I look at the news and I have worry. But what I'm really focusing on is trying to limit my exposure to the news and focus on the things that are within my control. And so this idea of metrics, KPIs, and critical numbers is all about focusing on what's in our control. And so before I jump into the meat of my workshop, so my hope today is you come out of this with some things that I'm going to focus on that are absolutely within my control, that are going to increase the odds that I get the things that I want out of my career, out of my life as we move forward, and that you're able to stay away from the things or limit the things that are distracting you, that are causing worry and those types of things. I'm not saying we don't need to be educated, but at some point, the news is no longer educating us, it's creating fear in us. And so we need to really pay attention to that and not let that happen. Get a little bit in the morning, get a little bit at the end of the day. Maybe look at your updates that inevitably come across your phone, but don't click on them. Don't get sucked into it. And so anyway, enough of me preaching, but I think that's really what we've got to do as we manage and lead our way through this pandemic that we're going. And I'm going to kick us off just with a couple of things that I have been talking about with my tribe. I'm going to give you two resources. If you've been on some other webinars, you've seen this, but one is Go Back to Good to Great, one of my most favorite business books. It was written in 2001 by Jim Collins, and reread chapter 4 that says we must confront the brutal facts, yet never lose faith. And it's a great chapter. I've read it twice now as we've been working our way through this coronavirus, this COVID-19 issue, just to be reminded of what I need to do as a leader. And I'm just going to share with you a couple quick quotes here, but in every case of adversity, these are the companies that went from good performance to great performance. In every case of adversity, in every company, every individual meets adversity. There's adversity every year. We're hitting kind of a big level of adversity, but there's always going to be adversity. In every case of adversity, the management team of the great companies responded with a powerful psychological duality. On the one hand, they stoically accepted the brutal facts of reality. On the other hand, they maintained an unwavering faith in the end game and a commitment to prevail as a great company despite the brutal facts. What separates people, Jim Stockdale, former vice president candidate, prisoner of war during the Vietnam War, that's where this whole idea of the Stockdale principle came from, is this principle he taught to Jim Collins. He said, what separates people, Stockdale taught me, is not the presence or absence of difficulty, but how they deal with that inevitable difficulties of life in business or as leaders. So again, I really want to encourage you, go back and reread this and think, how can I face the brutal facts of my business? Some of you may be losing business, your jobs may be at risk. There's a lot of brutal facts we're facing, but how do we not lose unwavering faith that we will prevail? This too shall pass, right? So I'm encouraging my clients, think of who do you want to be when we get to the other side? Let's maintain that commitment to that. And then the second one I want to share with you is the law of the picture from John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And this is a quote from that chapter. And I love this quote. He says, "The leaders who make the greatest impact are often those who lead well in the midst of uncertainty." We're in uncertain times right now. Andy Stanley, an excellent leader and communicator, has addressed this issue a few years ago at the Catalyst Conference. He said this. I love this quote. "Uncertainty is not an indication of poor leadership. Rather, it indicates a need for leadership." Our people that are looking to you, and this is your family, your neighbors, as well as people that work for you in your companies, they need you. Uncertainty is not an indication of poor leadership. Rather, it indicates a need for leadership. The nature of leadership demands that there always be an element of uncertainty. And the temptation is to think, if I were a good leader, I would know exactly what to do. That is not true. Many of us don't know what to do right now, right? I mean, these are unprecedented times. Increased responsibility means dealing with more and more intangibles and therefore more complex uncertainty. Now, listen to this last quote here. Leaders, all of us on the phone, can afford to be uncertain, but we cannot afford to be unclear. People will not follow fuzzy leadership. So we need to be resolute in the direction we're going to take. So again, what can we focus on that's within our control? What's that next step that we can take? And that's what I'm hoping you get out of this webinar. Okay, what are some ideas of the next steps that I can stay focused on that are moving me, my organization, my team forward while maintaining the faith that we're going to get through this and we're going to prevail? Remember, it's the obstacles, it's the challenges that make us stronger. You don't go to the gym and not lift any weights and expect to get stronger. You've got to have the resistance to get stronger. This resistance we're going through will serve us and help us be better leaders. So let me jump into the key of my program today. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is based off the book Scaling Up. I'm a scaling up coach. It's a powerful business management system. This is Vern and I. He's the good looking one. I'm the one who knows how to wear the colors that represent our brand. And our system is based around 4 key decisions that companies must get right. You know, the right people doing the right things right, strategy, unique and differentiated, execution. That's what I'm going to focus on today. Execution, the ability to commit to the work we're going to get done and make that work happen. So a big focus of today is on execution and then developing cash. But when we execute well, when our team is executing well, this is a metaphor of what that looks like. All those planes are in perfect alignment. It's a thing of beauty. And that's what we want to bring about out of our teams. And these tools that I'm going to give you today are going to help you. And so what I'm about is helping my leaders understand where they want to go long-term, and then what do we need to focus on today? Okay, so success, you might write this in your notes. Success is in our daily routine. We may not be able to control what's going to happen with COVID-19, when these, quarantines are going to be lifted, all the crazy stuff that are going on. But what we can control are the actions we take today and the decisions that we make today. And we want to take actions and decisions that are in alignment with where we're going in the long term, recognizing that there's ups and downs in every business. There's challenges in all stages of life. And it's the challenges that make us stronger. If there was never any resistance, we wouldn't grow. And those of you that are committed to building great organizations and great teams are going to grow through this experience. We may not like it going through it, but when we get to the other side, there's going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity that those that are prepared will be able to seize upon. Okay, so an execution roadmap. How do we get things done as leaders? Well, the fundamental disciplines of getting things done, of making things happen, there's three of them. Number one, it's the discipline to prioritize. This is the discipline to focus on the vital few versus the trivial many, right? What's most important right now? And what's most important to you and your business and with your team right now is probably different than what you thought it was going to be a month ago. But what's most important right now, that's what leaders do. They filter through all the stuff and say, what do I or what does my team need to be focused on right now? Number two, it's the discipline to measure, to have milestones, to have feedback that can tell us, am I on track or off track? Am I having a good day or a bad day? And these critical numbers and KPIs that I'm going to talk about in a minute are going to help us there. And then number three, number three, it's the discipline to have a communication rhythm. As leaders, this is what I said earlier. We can afford to be uncertain. What we cannot afford to be is unclear. And so especially in the environment we're in today, daily communication is required. In fact, a lot of my clients have gone to communicating twice daily huddles, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Focused on in the morning, what are we focused on getting done today? In the afternoon, what came up, what's changed? Things are moving so fast that communication has got to be taking place. And so one of the things you can control is how much you're communicating. Tonight, when you go home, rather than watching the news, call your family, right? Communicate with people. People need to be heard right now. There's nothing better than human-to-human communication. Don't rely on email. Don't rely on text messages. Don't rely on Facebook. Not that there's anything wrong with communicating that way. Just make sure that you've got plenty of one-on-one, belly button to belly button communicating. That's how humans, for thousands of years, that's how we've communicated. Email's only been around for around 50 years, right? But our ability to communicate person to person, there's nothing but more important than that, especially during this time of crisis. We need to build an execution plan. And here's some components that I'm going to talk about in this webinar: critical numbers, priorities, KPIs, and a theme. I'm not going to cover a theme, but I'm going to cover critical numbers, KPIs, and I'll talk on priorities. Dashboards. This creates visibility. This creates transparency. It creates accountability, and it allows us to gamify the business. So when we talk about these numbers, can we get them up? You would never imagine going and watching a sporting event and not having the score up on the board. You'd lose all your engagement with the game. Well, your employees lose engagement with your game of business if you're not keeping numbers on how we're doing. It's a way to engage people. And if you can gamify it by having fun and contests and those types of things, it gets your team even more aligned. And then the communication rhythms, keeping the team aligned, keeping the main thing, what I talked about a minute ago. So let me give you some definitions. Now, these are in your workbook. Take some notes as appropriate. So you're going to hear these terms: metric, KPI, critical number. So what is a metric? A metric is a measure of a business process's status. Metrics provide data which may or may not be important to strategic objectives. So write in your workbook the word important. They may or may not be important. A KPI. A KPI stands for key performance indicator. Key performance indicator. It is an important metric. So remember, above we said it may or may not be important to a strategic initiative. A KPI is important. It's something that's important for us to manage that measures the progress of a strategic objective. A KPI may measure results, which we sometimes call a lagging measure, or data that may lead to a result that we call a leading indicator. What we need to get better at is focusing on leading indicators. Okay, I'm going to go through these. I'm going to give you some. We're going to talk about these today, so this will become clear. And then a critical number is the most important KPI based on the state of the business in the current environment. So my mentor, Vern Harnish, sent this out. Many of you may have received this, but his message is why talk time is fundamental. And he challenged us to make our critical number how much time we spent on the phone talking to our clients and our employees, the people around us. And in a non-business text, it may be your family. So that was our critical number this week. Earlier this week, on Monday, I spent the entire day on the phone talking to people because I felt like there's nothing more important right now. So I've got a 10-hour day. I want 8.5 hours to be with communication with the people that mean the most to me, which is my clients in a business context and my family in a personal context. So that's what we mean by a critical number. A month ago, that wasn't a critical number for me. It was still important, but it wasn't a critical number. So that's what we're talking about with the critical number. What's most important right now? And then the goal, this is the end towards which effort is directed. So what do we ultimately want? And with my clients, I set quarterly, annual, and 3-year goals. And then a BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal. Now, this is a term that Jim Collins came up with in another book he wrote called Built to Last. But it's a 10 to 25-year aspirational goal. It provides constant context for all the decisions. So all decisions should be made with what do I need to do short term to ultimately get me to my long-term goal. So my goal is to build a thriving coaching business, to be perceived as the preeminent expert, to help 100 companies get across $100 million in annual revenue. That's my BHAG. So what do I need to be doing in the midst of all this uncertainty to make progress today while staying in alignment with that BHAG? And that came back to talking to my clients, right? That's the most important thing that I could do this week. And that's why that was my critical number. So let me give you some more context. Let me give you an analogy here that I really hope is going to help you kind of put this into context. So let me pretend that we were going to set a goal this year of running a marathon. And we want to, so that's 26.2 miles, and we want to do it in under 4 hours. Okay, so that would be a goal, right? That would be a goal. Now, think in your business, you've got different goals. In your personal life, you have different goals. But let's use this one as a goal because I'm hoping everybody on the phone can relate to it. So what metrics and key performance indicators might we track? Think about that. What metrics or key performance indicators would you track if that was your goal, right? So these are going to tell us what do we need to do each day to give us the highest probability of success. And they're going to help us determine, are we on track? Are we off track? And are we getting better, right? So are we making progress so that on 12/31, I can run this 26 miles and do it in a time frame that's within my goal? So I put together 3 different categories. I think I might look at my physical training. I might look at diet, would probably be important. And I probably need some routines to reduce the risk of injury, right? To make sure I can succeed. So for physical training, what might I have here? Well, I might want to track how many miles I'm running. And I might want to track the pace. What pace am I running? How many minutes is it taking me to run that mile? And I might want to think about my diet. So I might want to track calories I'm consuming. And I might want to think about what's the mix of where I'm getting those calories. So what's the mix from proteins, carbohydrates, and fats? Might be some metrics that I want to track, some data that I want to track that'll help me determine if I'm going to have the highest probability of being able to run this marathon on December 31st in this time frame that I want to do it on. And some routines I might build is I might have some stretching or some yoga routines. I may say I want to do yoga 4 times a week for an hour. so that my muscles stay limber, so I reduce the risk. I pull a hamstring or something worse. I might want to monitor my heart rate. And I might say I want to train within a certain zone. So I don't want to train too high. I don't want to train too low. But I might want to set some routines around, how I manage my heart rate. And then I may want to log, or I may want to journal this. So if you notice, all of these things on here are within my control. They're all things that I can do. They require my discipline to follow through. But notice, I could do all of those things and still not hit that goal, right? But if I do all these things right, I'm going to significantly increase my odds of hitting the goal. So these are the things that are within my control. What's within my influence that I need to have faith is going to come through if I do these things right, is actually running that marathon within my design time. Now, to help increase the odds that I get to that goal, I may set up some milestone goals. So I may say, I want to look at every quarter, or I may want to look at every month that I'm making progress. So at the end of the first month, maybe I want to be running, maybe I want to be able to do a 10-mile run at a 9-minute pace, for example. And maybe at the end of 2 months, maybe I want to be able to do that and do it at an 8-minute and 50-second pace. Maybe at mile 3. So I can start to build a plan of how I'm going to get there, right? But those milestone goals are within my influence, right? I may get an injury. The weather may turn horrendous. We may get some pandemic like we're dealing with today that takes me off track and I'm unable to execute on that goal. But what I know is that if I stay focused on these things that are within my control, I'm going to have the highest probability of delivering on my goal of running this marathon. So if you look at that list, I've got a list on there of metrics. I've got a list of KPIs, and I may have a critical number or two that's in that list. So which of those do you think would be a metric? Which do you think would be a KPI? And which do you think would be a critical number as you look at that list? Which of those might hit? And the answer, I don't mean for this to be a trick question, but the answer is it depends. It depends. So I would assume, if I was building this plan, because they're all tied to a strategic initiative of running the marathon, that they would all be key performance indicators. They would all be important because they're aligning with that strategic initiative. So maybe none of those are metrics. Now, I happen to run a little bit. I'm not training to run a marathon, but heart rate for me is just a metric. I track it. It's interesting, but it's not critical. My pace right now is just a metric because it's not tied to a strategic initiative. If I had a strategic initiative to run a race by a certain date, then it would become a key performance indicator. So just understand that's the only difference between a metric and a KPI. And what is a KPI one period may become a metric the next because it no longer becomes strategic. The critical number is going to depend on where I am in my routine. So the critical number could be the number of miles I'm running. It could be pace. It could be calories. It could be percentage proteins. It could be journaling. It could be stretching. If I'm brand new in the journey, it may be all about stretching. It may be getting my body limber enough to take on the stress. And so for 1 month, I may want to monitor how much time am I spending doing yoga or some other type of stretching routine. It could be just getting to where I can run miles unbroken. And that may be my critical number in that period. So the critical number can change based on what's going on in our business. I would have never envisioned that this week my critical number would be how much time I'm spending talking to my clients, right? But that's my critical number right now. I think there's nothing more important that I can do than connect with my clients. So again, these numbers can move around. So let me talk about where they show up on the one-page strategic plan. So this is for those of you that have worked through scaling up and you're working with me. on the one-page strategic plan. And if you're not, this is available for free download. You can send me a message after the meeting, and I'll get you a copy of the one-page strategic plan. But across the top, this is where we put our metrics, right? These are metrics. They're non-strategic. They're just metrics. They're helping us know where we on track or off track. I often use the analogy, this is like in your car, your water temperature of your car. Nobody probably pays attention to the temperature gauge. However, if that temperature gauge gets out of whack, you want to know about it. Okay, that's the reason we put them up here. They're designed to help us determine, are we on track or off track? Are we intolerance, but they're not strategic. Where do we put strategic measures? We call it KPIs. Well, profit per X is a KPI, and brand promise, we've got KPIs. And then up here, we list KPIs every quarter that we want you and then your team to focus on. These are the critical, the key performance indicators that are going to tell us, are you making progress on the priorities, on the initiatives that you have for the quarter? And then we've got critical numbers. So notice we've got critical numbers for the year, we've got critical numbers for the quarter, and then I encourage each of your individual departments to have a critical number that deals with the people side of your business and a critical number that deals with the productivity side of the business. So this is where we capture these numbers. And then we also add in goals. So we have a 3-year goal, a 1-year goal, and a quarterly goal. And then we have priorities. And priorities, we have 1 year, quarterly, and then each department has a priority. So that's where these numbers show up. If you think about the one-page plan, gosh, Mark, it's got a lot of measurement on it. That's right. It's about measuring our progress towards our goal. If we built a one-page strategic plan on running your marathon or getting to some maybe ultra marathon, some of you that want to do that, or maybe running a marathon's a 3-year goal for you, we could build a plan using this to help you get there. That's all I'm demonstrating, is where those numbers fit. So let me spend a couple minutes, and then I'm going to get into kind of how you might build your plan. So KPI types. I said there's leading indicators and lagging measures. Leading indicators are typically measured daily or weekly, and they predict, are you going to get to the goal? So running every day, stretching every day, and eating right, those are leading indicators. They don't guarantee I'm going to get to the goal, but they give us the highest probability of getting to the goal. Now, I know those work for running because so many people have gone ahead of me. Some of you are pioneering new things in your business that nobody's gone ahead of you. So you've got to play with these KPIs, with these leading indicators, to see which ones have the highest correlation to getting to the lagging measure. So lagging measures are, I sometimes call these milestone goals. You know, I thought if I ran this much every day, if I ate and I stretched, that by the end of the first month, I would be at this pace. I may or may not get there, but once I get that measure at the end of the month, it's kind of too late. I can't really do anything about it. That's a check-in. That's a lagging measure, right? If you look in the rearview mirror, that's telling me where I've been. It doesn't predict where I'm going to go. It tells me if I'm on track or off track, so it's important, but it doesn't predict. It's those leading indicators that predict. So what are some types? So leading indicators, as I mentioned, they're most in your control. They require discipline to do, and they're predictive of goal achievement. And by the way, this is in your notes. Lagging measures, they're typically within your influence, not within your direct control. And they look backwards, and they're a milestone that tells you if you're on track or off track for goal achievement. So again, in your notes, KPIs, most in your control, they're predictive. Lagging measures, not in your direct control, but they're a milestone that tells you if you're on track for your goal achievement. This circle of control is, I'm sure I got this from somebody. Somebody asked me where I got it a while back, and I honestly don't remember, but I have taught this so much, and it's helped so many of my clients. So many of you on the phone have probably seen it before. But think about, there's kind of three areas, right? There's those things that are in our control. There's the things that are within our influence. And then there's the things that are out of our control. And if we want to hit a goal, and if we want to move forward, we've got to do everything in our power to stay focused on what's in our control, to trust or have faith on those things that are within our influence, and to do everything in our power to keep from being distracted by those things that are out of our control. And keeping from being distracted has always been a challenge, but it's a real challenge now. But this is what focusing on that daily routine, focusing on those things that are going to have the highest probability of bringing the outcome we want are so important. And when we do this, watch these circles. When we're successful here, then what's in our control begins to expand. The more we discipline here, the things that are in our control expand. The things that are within our influence continue to expand. And the things that are out of our control become very small, or they have a very minor impact in us ultimately getting to our long-term goal. And that's why Jim Collins in chapter number 4 said the greatest leaders confront the brutal facts, yet never lose faith, right? They recognize that adversity is part of the journey, that adversity is going to make us stronger, that there's going to be times that aren't fun, but we got to deal with them, but we got to stay focused on the things we can control and not let fear or uncertainty paralyze us and keep us from moving. I've used the analogy, I taught my kids, we were a boating family, and I said, if we get in a storm, you've got to keep attacking the waves. You got to keep going into the waves. If you put the boat in neutral and stop, the waves will turn you sideways. They'll start coming over the side. And worst case scenario, they could even capsize or sink our boat. You've got to keep going into it. And I think it's a great analogy for what we're going through with COVID-19. Keep taking steps. Keep moving forward. Your critical number may be different. It may be like mine. I'm gonna see how many people I can talk to, how much time I can spend on the phone connecting with people. But that's a heck of a lot better than being frozen in front of the news, paralyzed, fearful of what's going to happen. Keep taking the steps forward. So let's get to your business. How do we put this in place for your business? So I've given you some metrics and some KPIs, and I've organized them around, the important parts of your business. So you think about your employees or your teammates. Think about your clients. Think about the shareholders that have invested in you or invested in your company. Think about whether you make a product or whether you buy a product or whether you deliver a product. How do I measure my productivity in that area? How do I measure my productivity in marketing, in sales? And how do I measure my productivity in terms of my ability to track the things that are most important to making sure I get paid, and I track the paperwork, the record keeping for all the things that we've done? And I'm not going to go through every one of these, but I'm going to hit on a couple of them. If you look under employees, doing employee surveys and either getting an employee net promoter score, or I've been using a new tool called Amplify, but getting feedback from your employees on how we're doing has never been more important. You can measure and getting a score, right? That's a predictive indicator. It's a score of how our culture's doing, measuring retention, measuring number of people we're promoting from within, A players. These are all great. These are great metrics. Could be KPIs, could be a critical number, right? Clients, net promoter score. Again, I love net promoter score. The brand promise indicators that I talked about earlier, customer complaints, customer retention, referrals are a great indicator, right? They're a great metric to measure. Are referrals going up? Are they going down? How are we trending, right? These are great ways to capture metrics so you can keep an eye on your business. They could be a key performance indicator if you've got a strategic initiative around moving them. They may be a critical number if they're the most important thing in your business right now. Shareholders, cash flow, EBITDA, profits, net operating income. revenue per employee, make buy, what's our cost per unit, how are our on-time deliveries, what's our labor efficiency. Again, these may be a metric, they may be a key performance indicator, it could be a critical number, depending on what's going on in your business, or there could be something else, right? Marketing and sales, how many leads are we getting? Website, how many people are coming to our website for information? M1 sales meetings, that's that first meeting in the sales process. M1 meetings per sale, revenue per sale. These are all things that you can track. I've got a list with probably 500 different KPIs on it. I'm happy to send it to you. But what I would encourage you to do, whatever business you're in, go to Google and say, what are important KPIs for X business, whatever business you're in. And you'll come back with a list. And if you run sales, say what is important for sales, this type of business. If you run operations. If you run a call center, and start looking at what are good KPIs that people use and start tinkering with different KPIs until you find those magic KPIs that really lead to the outcomes that you're looking for, the goals, the lagging measures, the milestones that you're looking for. So let me wrap up by taking you through an exercise here in your workbook. And I know we've covered a lot, but I want you to think about this, and this will be something you can work on when we're done. But I want you to start working on, how do I design the right leading indicators for me, for my team, for my organization? And I want you to start, if you turn to page 3 in your workbook, I've got some worksheets in here. But number 1, I want you to start with, what is your SMARTY goal for your team? And SMARTY, you can Google SMARTY goal, and I've got some blogs that are written on this, but it's a specific, measurable goal that's tied to a reason why. Reasons first, answers second. It's never a lack of resources, more commonly a lack of resourcefulness that keeps us from getting a goal. So understanding why you want it is foundational in my book of getting things that we want, of driving the change we need to get the things you want. But where are you today? When do you want it? And what milestone goals or lagging measures will guide you? So what do you most want out of your department, out of your business? Write that down where it says, what is your SMARTY goal? Don't worry about it being perfect, but just write. If I said, where do you want to be at the end of the year? Where do you want to be at the end of the year? And forget about the fact we're going through this pandemic, because we got a lot of year to make up time. I know there's a lot of uncertainty right now, but there's going to be huge opportunity that's going to come out on the other side. So maintain strong faith, right? Don't let your faith diminish. So if you had a goal set at the beginning of the year, put that goal down, own that goal. Okay, so what is that goal? If you know where you are today, put that down. If your goal is sales or something along that nature, if you've got a health goal, or if you've got some operating metrics, customer sat, cost per transaction, whatever it is in your department, average handle time on calls, customer satisfaction if you run a call center. And then when will you arrive? So if you're doing an annual, I'd encourage you to put 12/31, but some of you may want to say a year from now, 3/30 of 2021, that's okay. And then what milestones or lagging measures are going to tell you, will guide you? For most of you, that'll just be a division of your bigger goal. So like I had an annual goal for this year, and I thought I was going to be on track coming out of February, but guess what? I'm going to be off track in March. But I know where I am. I'm forecasting the rest of the year, and I've got ideas of what I need to do once we get on the other side of this to go make that happen. Number 2, determine the disciplines or the routines to ensure that you achieve that goal. So what are those disciplines or those routines? Now, I would encourage you right here to think on the other side of this pandemic. I mean, I've been telling my clients, right now we're all about adding value to other people. Okay, so that was part of why my critical number this week has been number of people I can talk to, right? It's about adding value to people. But we're going to get to the other side of this pandemic and we're going to get back to business. And so I would encourage you to think about what are those routines that I need to have in place to ensure I hit that goal. So it may be a prospecting goal. It may be a planning goal. It may be a discipline of measuring production every week. It may be a discipline of running a labor efficiency ratio and looking at it every week. It may be a discipline of managing overtime. It may be a discipline of not relying on contractors. It may be a discipline of making sure that we're getting the work done right the first time. I don't know what it is, but you do. You do. What are the things that if somebody said, if you do these 3 things right, it's going to give us the highest probability of delivering on that goal at the end of the year? And write this down here. And notice I use the word disciplines because go back to my running analogy, getting out of bed and running is a discipline, right? This morning I got up and I thought, do I really want to run this morning? And I thought, well, I ran yesterday and I ran a little bit longer than normal. And then I said, no, I mean, if I'm going to stay in shape, do this challenge, I need to run. And if I'm going to keep my mind right so I can add value to my clients, I need to run. So what are those disciplines? You know what they are. Put them down that you need to focus on to make sure that you deliver on that goal for this year. And think about the disciplines that are in the daily routine. What do we need to do day to day, week to week to ensure we deliver on that goal? What milestones or lagging measures will tell you if you're on track or off track? So how do you know? How are you going to know if you're on track? So if you want to reduce average handle time, if you want to reduce cost per call, if you want to improve, if you want to bring in more revenue, what do we need to do or what will tell us if we're on track or off track on a monthly basis? For oftentimes, this is the same metric as the goal. So if I have a goal to run 26 miles at a 8-minute pace, then I need to track miles and pace every month. That's going to tell me whether I'm on track or off track. The KPIs that are going to tell me if I'm there, the key performance indicators are going to be miles run daily or weekly, pace, food consumption, calorie consumption, stretching, the other things that I talked about. So starting to come together for you here. Those are going to tell me if I'm on, if I'm doing the daily disciplines. The milestone of whether I actually get my pace down and my length down is going to tell me if I'm on track with my bigger goal. Then pick your leading indicators and your lagging measures. So go through and circle, 2 or 3 leading indicators and go through and circle 1 or 2 lagging measures that you're committed to tracking for the foreseeable future. Let's say the next 2 or 3 months, and you're going to see, is this working? Are these disciplines getting me what I want? That's what I'm asking you to do here. The vital few versus the trivial many. The thing that I erased at the beginning said we're drowning in information and starving for wisdom. When I ran sales teams, there's a million things you could track. I tracked first meeting to second meeting, conversion ratios, and total meetings to close. Those are the 3 metrics, 3 KPIs that I drove the business. The most important critical number, most all the time, was first meetings. Are we getting in front of new prospects? So for many of you that are in business related fields, it's new people, right? If you want to make some money, see some new people. If you want to make a lot of money, see a lot of new people. And that principle has served me for 30 years and I don't see it going away. And I built sales teams on that metric. That's what I tracked. So the art is finding what's that metric for you. Then set your targets. Okay, so what is my minimum acceptable? That's red. Anything below that, I'm red. What's my ideal target? That's green. And then what's a stretch goal? And remember, I'm asking you to set this on your daily disciplines. So if I set a goal to run 4 days a week and run 20 miles a week, maybe a super green would be to be able to run 25, maybe to go 5 days a week. Or maybe it would be around pace, right? To do it instead of doing it at a 9-minute pace, to do it at an 8-minute pace, 8.5-minute pace, or 8 minutes and 45 seconds. So I might say at a minimum, I'm going to run at 9.5-minute pace. Ideal is 9, but man, if I could push it, I'd love to get down to 8:45. And so I've got a stretch goal. So the value there is if I hit my green, my target, I hit my goal, but I've got another stretch ahead of that that's pushing me. So think of the same thing around your key performance indicators in your critical number, right? What's minimum, what's your target, and what's your stretch. And then which is critical and who's accountable. Now, I've been speaking the majority of this call to you for you setting something personal to you, but this works the same with your team. So which one of these is critical? Based on where you are in your business right now, what is a critical number? Now, I'm going to give you grace here since we're in the middle of this season that is not going to last forever, but it's going to last for a period of time. You may pick a critical number that's not on that list. Just like when I built my plan at the beginning of the year, talk time was not a critical number for me, but it's a critical number this week, okay, because of where we are. Right? I think it was Mike Tyson who said everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And, this virus has hit us in the mouth. So my critical number is a little different, but that's okay. I'll get back on track with my normal plan when we get to the other side. And then who is accountable? Write the initials. If it's you, you're accountable for it. If it's somebody else on your team, it could be somebody else on your team. Accountability belongs to the one person who is able to count. In other words, they can tell us, are we on track or off track? And they can count the progress and give voice when issues arise within a defined task. This is not the same as authority or responsibility. But when you're working with teams, like I sent a blog out this morning on, somebody needs to be accountable for all the government regulations, determining what are the regulations, which ones can we take advantage of, and somebody in your organization needs to be accountable for doing that. That doesn't mean they're responsible for ensuring the organization complies, and that doesn't mean that they have the authority to make decisions, but they're accountable for making sure that we understand everything that this new government help and funding that's come out, that we're able to take advantage of as much of that as we want. So think, who's accountable? Is it you? Is it somebody on your team to make sure that we're hitting those numbers? So I'm going to save some time for questions. So just a couple things I'm going to close with here. Balanced. We want to stay balanced between people and productivity. Okay, so keep some balance. And if you go back to the page in your workbook where I had this, if you look to the left, we've got our people or reputational drivers. That's employees, customers, shareholders. And then we've got process and productivity. Those are the ones on the right. So you want to think of a balance. That's why when we do critical numbers, we typically do one on the left and one on the right to keep those numbers balanced. And then here's some different examples of leading versus lagging. So qualified leads is a leading indicator towards lagging, which is the revenue bookings. People versus productivity, strategic versus tactical. So again, it's okay to play with these numbers until you get it right? People are drowning in information. They're starving for wisdom. They don't need 1,000 things to look at. They need a handful, 2 or 3. That's the art, is us finding the 2 to 3 that are the vital few versus the trivial many. We may have 100 metrics that we track, but only 3 to 5 should be key performance indicators that we've got the organization focused on this stage. We keep track of the other ones because, like our water heater, we don't want them to boil over or a problem. So we want to have a dashboard that tells us how we're doing. But the key performance indicators are those that align with our strategic initiatives. Let me close with this quote from Vern. Goals without routines or goals without disciplines are wishes. They're wishes. I think it was Emerson who said, vision without execution is hallucination, right? This is about execution. So Vern says it this way: goals without routines are wishes. Routines without goals are aimless. The most successful business leaders have a clear vision in the disciplines to make it a reality. Remember, success is in our daily routine. So let me open it up to some questions. Again, if you'll use the Q&A and post your questions in there, would love to help you. There will also be an emailed evaluation that will come out. A copy of the deck and a webinar recording will be our thanks for giving us feedback. I've got scheduled a follow-up discussion on here. Very few of you take advantage of that. I am really here to help, to serve. I tell my clients, I'll tell you, I'm here to be, number one, a friend. Number two, if I can be an ear just to listen, I'm happy to just be an ear to listen. Or if you need a thinking partner to help you think through something, think through a decision that you need to make. I'd love to be that, and I would love to be it even more in this time of just tremendous uncertainty that we're dealing with right now. Mary, I see that you typed something, but maybe I didn't get the whole question. So I'd be happy to take that question. I've also got my contact information. So if you want to give me a call, you want to shoot me an email, I'd love to help to the best of my ability. I was listening to a John Maxwell leadership. He did a leadership summit over the last 3 days on leading through a crisis. It was fantastic. And he told a story about, two guys in a boat, and they're sitting on one end of the boat, on the other end of the boat, or all the other people, and the hole in the boat happens to be where all the other people are sitting. And one guy looks at the other and he says, man, aren't you glad we're not on the side of the boat with the hole in it? Well, the truth is the hole in the boat is going to sink the boat no matter what side it is. And so the point of the story is we're all in this mess together, and we need to stick together. We need to work together. And I'm happy to be that resource for you and help you in any way I can. I don't profess to have all the answers. I don't profess to have very many answers, but I can sure listen and share with you what I'm seeing other successful leaders do, and hopefully bring some ideas and some perspective to you that can help you be a better leader for your people. So questions, comments? I don't see any in the Q&A. Let me check the text. I don't see any in the text message here either, or in the chat. Oh, here's Mary. My question is about agility. We set KPIs, but in this time of conflict, our company goals are changing rapidly. How do you manage existing KPIs while incorporating new KPIs as companies' goals shift? I think that's a great question, Mary. I have a feeling a lot of people are dealing with this. I think what was in your original plan, I teach, put your goals in concrete and write your plan in sand. So let me say that again. Cast your goals in concrete and put your plan in sand, because your plan could change. It's like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. I didn't have one client that said, hey, I anticipate dealing with a major pandemic this quarter, so we're going to structure our plan in a way that sets us up to take advantage of that. Nobody saw this coming. But guess what? We're here, right? We got a battle. And so the things that were important for us to focus on at the beginning of the quarter, which was just 90 days ago or 65 days ago or 70 days ago, versus the things that we're focusing on today are different. So we need flexibility in our approach. So I'm encouraging my clients to think about, what can you do today with a bias towards action and a bias towards adding value to others with no expectation of anything in return. So for the last couple weeks, is how do we serve our marketplace? That's customers, that's clients. Part of the reason I'm doing a lot more webinars than I ever have is because I just want to add value to my community. I'm reaching out to my clients and saying, how can I help? I'm sharing resources. I'm sharing stories of other clients. I'm trying to help people get through this period we're in. Now, my feeling is that we're going through something that's kind of similar to grieving, right? We've gone through shock. We've gone through, oh my God, is this really happening to me? Is this really true? Denial. We're going to come out of this in a week. This is just going to blow over. Oh, this is overblown. This isn't real. But we're starting to settle in now. We're in week 2 of, for most of us, we've been quarantined. I think going into next week 3, we're going to start to accept that things are going to be different for the foreseeable future, and we're going to get back to some semblance of business. I don't think it's ever, or it's unlikely it's going to be like it was at the end of February. I think there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be different from this point forward, but we're going to get back to business. And so as you think about KPIs, those KPIs, that operating model you had at the beginning of the quarter will probably become relevant again, mid-April, maybe end of April. Between now and April, just focus on what's most important today, right? And it's shifting. It's part of the power of the daily huddle, is to focus on what's most important now. And for some of you, it's business as usual, but for many of you, it's something different. And I can't tell you exactly what that is, but think about what can I can control that's going to move me and my organization forward with that goal towards that big picture that we're getting to, that sets us up to be able to seize the opportunity that's inevitably going to come on the other side of this. So I hope that answered your question. It was a great question and a difficult one, but appreciate you asking. Okay, guys, I don't see any other questions. If I can help, here's Joni. I am the COO of a group of dental practices. We are in the process of scaling our business for growth, and this has been very difficult for us, but we have hope that we will come out stronger and more disciplined than ever before. My question is, during this crisis, how do you stick to the KPIs and managing the metrics, keep everyone motivated on for us, which is a productivity number for when I return? As you know, patients are reluctant to schedule. I am personally struggling with my motivation to my teams below me. Great question, Joni. I feel, and I think your questions may be similar to Mary's. Mary's in a business development role, and you're a COO. I would really encourage you to focus on how can we add value to our patients during this period. And even if it's just reaching out, and an email makes it so easy to send a blast email, but those emails aren't connecting. You guys are getting them, I get them, I scroll through them and I delete them. Everybody's written to tell me how they're taking coronavirus seriously. I would encourage you to send a personalized note. I would encourage you to drop a text or a phone message that's personal, non-automated, personal. And I would focus on that for the next week or two. That will set you up, in my opinion, to have the highest probability of getting your dental practices back on track when we come out on the other side of this. And, our clients are going to remember how we behave during this time. And so this is a fundamental belief of me, but I've taken all commerce out of my communication. It's not about even opportunities that I had in track for new coaching clients. I mean, I'm following up saying, how can I help? How can I serve? Can I be a sounding board? Can I listen? That may not be appropriate for the dental practice, but just calling and saying, I care. How are you doing with your kids? I know homeschooling's tough. Here's what I'm hearing from other parents. I'll tell you, I talked to a client on Monday, quick story. And I was sharing this principle. He said, Mark, I spent the whole morning this morning talking to my team. He goes, I'd been doing things through my huddles and doing things through my team meetings. He goes, I cannot tell you how personally motivating and inspiring it was to talk to my team. And so I'm doing my best to convey how strongly I feel that that's an action you can control and that it's an action that's going to move you forward. It may not feel like the most productive thing you've ever done. It may not be something you've ever done, but I think it's a critical number that you should be managing. How many clients can we connect with and just tell them we care about you? Ask about their kids, ask them how they're doing in this environment, share tips you've gotten from other parents, and just be a resource for them. And then when we get back on track, Joni, then start tracking the things that inevitably were in your plan that you were focused on before this craziness started. I hope that helps. If you want to call me, I'm open to visiting with you. So don't hesitate to send me an email or give me a call. I'd love to be a sounding board. Okay, great questions. Anything else? Okay, thanks for the comments, Joni. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Hey, thanks guys for being on the call. I appreciate you. I care about you. I know it's difficult. We're in this together. Let's band together. Let's keep sharing ideas, and let's make a difference for those that matter the most. Have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks. Bye.